The shot sailed wide of the far post by 3 yards, and in that instant, 80,000 voices fell silent. It was the 81st minute of El Clásico, the score locked at 1-1, and the entire season balanced on what happened next. By the time Barcelona scored their winning goal 90 seconds later, the damage was done. By the final whistle, Luka Modrić had already left the pitch without shaking anyone's hand. By Monday morning, half the squad wasn't speaking to the other half. By Tuesday, Carlo Ancelotti had called an emergency meeting that solved nothing. But it started with 11 words whispered by a veteran to a journalist in the mixed zone, words that no one, especially Jude Bellingham, was supposed to hear. He thinks he's already a legend, but legends know when to pass the torch, not steal it. Don't forget to subscribe to Elite Ball Legends and like the video for your support. Thank you for subscribing. Jude Bellingham had been at Real Madrid for 17 months, and in that time, he had become something more than a footballer. He had become a phenomenon. At 21 years old, the English midfielder carried himself with the confidence of someone who had already conquered everything, and perhaps he had earned that right. 23 goals in his debut season, man-of-the-match performances in Champions League knockout rounds, the Bernabéu chanting his name before the kickoff, endorsement deals that made him one of the most marketable athletes on the planet, magazine covers, social media numbers that rivaled pop stars. He was the present and the future, wrapped in the iconic white of Real Madrid, and he knew it. Luka Modrić had been at Real Madrid for 12 years, and in that time, he had become something more than a footballer. He had become a legend. At 39 years old, the Croatian maestro moved across the pitch with the economy of motion that only comes from 10,000 professional matches, every step deliberate, every touch purposeful. 6 Champions League titles, Ballon d'Or winner, World Cup finalist, captain of his national team, the man who had replaced Xavi and Iniesta in the conversation about the greatest midfielders of a generation. His contract expired at the end of this season, and everyone knew this was likely his final El Clásico, his final chance to add one more moment of magic to a career that had been built on thousands of them. The March evening had started perfectly. Madrid weather in spring carried a particular quality, the air cool but not cold, the sky clear. The floodlights at the Santiago Bernabéu creating columns of brilliance that could be seen from kilometers away. The stadium had filled 2 hours before kickoff. Every seat occupied, every concourse packed with fans in white scarves and jerseys. The noise building like a physical force. This wasn't just another match in La Liga. Barcelona was 3 points ahead in the table with 7 matches remaining. A Madrid victory would close the gap and swing momentum. A Barcelona win would all but secure the title. Everything mattered. Every touch, every pass, every decision. In the dressing room, Bellingham had sat in his usual spot, corner position near the showers, the number 5 on his back hanging on the hook above his head. He had developed routines since arriving in Madrid, always the last to put his boots on, always checking his phone one final time, exactly 12 minutes before walking out. Always adjusting his captain's armband, even though he wasn't the official captain. That armband had become a point of quiet tension. Modrić wore it for most matches, the veteran leader, the symbol of continuity. But Ancelotti had started giving it to Bellingham for the biggest games, the statement clear. This is the future of Real Madrid. Bellingham had never asked for it, but he had never refused it either. Modrić had sat across the room, his usual spot near the tactics board, watching the younger players with the expression of someone who had seen this movie before. He had been the young prodigy once, the player who had arrived at Real Madrid with everything to prove. He had learned from Xabi Alonso, from Sergio Ramos, from Cristiano Ronaldo. He had been mentored by Zinedine Zidane as a coach. He understood the responsibility of wearing the white shirt, the weight of expectation that came with every match at the Bernabéu. And he had tried to pass that knowledge to Bellingham, tried to teach him the difference between confidence and arrogance, between ambition and selfishness. But teaching only worked when the student wanted to learn. The first half had been everything El Clásico promised, intense, tactical, violent in its beauty. Barcelona pressed high, their young midfielders Gavi and Pedri harassing every Madrid touch. Madrid absorbed the pressure and countered with pace, Vinicius Jr. on the left wing causing havoc, Bellingham surging forward from midfield with the timing of a natural striker. Modrić sat deeper, the metronome, dictating tempo with passes that seemed simple until you realized they had bypassed three defenders. The connection between them had always been Madrid's greatest weapon: Modric's vision, finding Bellingham's runs, Bellingham's energy, creating space for Modric's precision. Poetry written in grass stains and sweat. Barcelona scored first in the 33rd minute, Ferran Torres finishing a quick counter-attack after a Madrid corner was cleared. The goal had come from a Bellingham decision. He had taken the corner short instead of delivering it into the box, tried to work a training ground routine, lost possession. Modrić had been open at the top of the area, calling for the ball, but Bellingham had chosen the intricate option over the simple one. 20 seconds later, Barcelona was celebrating. The Bernabéu had gone quiet, 70,000 people suddenly exhaling tension into the night air. Madrid equalized in the 59th minute, and it had been everything the first goal wasn't: simple, direct, perfect. Modrić received the ball 30 yards from goal, took one touch to set himself, and delivered a pass that split Barcelona's defense like a surgeon's scalpel. Bellingham had timed his run perfectly, arriving at the ball just as the goalkeeper committed, slotting it low into the corner. The roar that erupted shook the stadium foundations. Bellingham had run to the corner flag, arms spread wide, soaking in the adoration. Modrić had jogged back to the center circle, job done, ready for the next phase. The 81st minute arrived like destiny. Barcelona had been pushing for a winner, throwing more players forward, leaving space behind. Madrid won the ball back, Modrić collecting it in midfield, turning, seeing the counter-attack developing with the clarity that only comes from 1,000 successful transitions. Vinicius was sprinting down the left. Rodrigo was making the diagonal run on the right. And there, in the channel, was Modrić himself, completely unmarked, in space, 15 yards from goal with only the goalkeeper to beat. Bellingham had received the ball at the top of the penalty area. The pass from Camavinga waited perfectly. He had three options, all of them good. Pass left to Vinicius in space. Pass right to Rodrigo making the far post run. Pass backward to Modrić, who was screaming for it, waving his arms, pointing at the space around him. The veteran was in his element, the position he had scored from 100 times, the moment he had lived for. But Bellingham saw something else. He saw the goalkeeper slightly off his line. He saw the top corner of the goal, visible, attainable. He saw the chance to be the hero, to seal the victory, to cement his status as the man who decided El Clásico. He shot. The ball left his foot with power, curling toward the far post, the trajectory looking perfect for half a second. Then it kept curling, past the post, into the advertising boards, 3 yards wide. The kind of miss that professionals don't make, especially not in the 81st minute of El Clásico with teammates open. The kind of miss that wins for the opposition. Modrić had stopped running. He had stood there, 15 yards from goal, unmarked, his arms still raised in the universal gesture of, "I was open." His face showed nothing, no anger, no frustration, just a blank expression that somehow communicated more than any shout ever could. He had turned and jogged back, not looking at Bellingham, not saying anything. Barcelona had collected the ball from behind the goal, thrown it to Ter Stegen, and launched the counterattack before Madrid could reset. 3 passes, 15 seconds, Pedri to Gavi to Lewandowski. The Polish striker had finished clinically, low and hard past Courtois. 2-1. The Bernabéu had fallen silent again, but this silence was different. Heavier, angrier, directed. Some of the crowd had started whistling, the Spanish gesture of disapproval, and it wasn't aimed at Barcelona. The final whistle had blown 7 minutes later. Madrid had pushed desperately for an equalizer, but Barcelona defended with discipline, running down the clock, celebrating every clearance like a goal. When the referee finally ended it, the Barcelona players had collapsed in joy on the pitch. The Madrid players had walked off with their heads down, the weight of a title race potentially decided by one moment, one decision, one missed opportunity. Bellingham had been the last to leave the field. He had stood at the center circle, hands on his hips, staring at the scoreboard like he could change it through force of will. The whistles had continued, some sections of the Bernabéu now openly jeering. His shirt was soaked through with sweat, his legs aching from 93 minutes of running, his mind replaying the shot over and over. He had meant to pass. No, that wasn't true. He had seen Modrić. He had chosen to shoot. He had believed. The tunnel at the Bernabéu was long and narrow, white walls lined with photographs of legends: Di Stefano, Puskás, Zidane, Ronaldo. The defeated players walked through it like condemned men, the sound of their boots echoing against the concrete. Bellingham had walked alone, no one speaking to him, everyone giving him space that felt more like quarantine. He could hear voices up ahead, the medical staff talking, journalists gathering in the mixed zone, the low hum of analysis beginning. Modrić had been walking with Dani Carvajal, the two veterans moving slowly, their legs heavy after 93 minutes of football at the highest level. They had stopped near the medical room, just around the corner from where Bellingham approached. A journalist, Tomás, from Marca, someone Modrić had known for years, had caught up to them, microphone out but not recording yet, just asking the casual questions that came before the formal interview. "What happened on that play, Luka? You were wide open." Bellingham had been 10 feet away, hidden by the corner, not intentionally eavesdropping, but unable to avoid hearing. Modric's voice had been quiet, tired, but clear. He thinks he's already a legend, but legends know when to pass the torch, not steal it. The words had hit Bellingham like a punch to the chest, not because they were shouted, not because they were accusatory, but because they were said with resignation, with disappointment, with the weight of someone who had tried and failed to teach an important lesson. They were the words of a teacher giving up on a student. Carvajal had said something in response, too quiet to hear. Modrić had laughed, bitter and short. "I've won 6 Champions Leagues. I've given everything to this club, and I'm going to finish my career watching a kid throw away matches because he wants to be on the Instagram highlight reel." Bellingham had felt his face flush hot. His hands had clenched into fists. Every instinct told him to step around, that corner, to confront Modrić, to defend himself. But his legs wouldn't move, because somewhere beneath the anger, beneath the wounded pride, was a smaller voice asking, what if he's right? He had turned and walked the other direction, toward the dressing room, his jaw tight, his eyes focused straight ahead. Some of the younger players, Arda Güler, Brahim Diaz, had tried to approach him, to offer comfort or solidarity, but Bellingham had brushed past them without acknowledgement. He had sat at his locker and stared at the floor, still in his kit, while the room slowly filled with defeated teammates. Ancelotti had given a brief speech, something about mistakes happening, about learning, about staying together. Bellingham barely heard it. He was replaying the shot, replaying the pass he didn't make, replaying Modric's words. The manager had looked directly at him during part of the speech, something about young players needing to trust their teammates, but Bellingham had refused to meet his eyes. Modrić had entered the dressing room 15 minutes later, his media obligations completed, his face showing nothing. He had walked to his locker, just 3 spots away from Bellingham's, and begun undressing in silence. The room had felt thick with tension, everyone aware of the elephant sitting between the two midfielders. Vinicius had tried to play music from his phone, the usual post-match routine, but someone, Carvajal, had told him to turn it off. Not tonight. Bellingham had showered quickly, dressed in his tailored suit, navy blue, perfectly cut, the uniform of a global superstar, and left without speaking to anyone. His car was waiting in the players' parking area, a black Mercedes that probably cost more than most people earned in 5 years. His driver had opened the door, and Bellingham had slid into the back seat, pulling out his phone, checking the immediate explosion of social media. The criticism was already everywhere. Twitter trending topics. How Bellingham, I'm selfish, yo Bally pass the ball. Instagram comments on his last post, thousands of them, mostly negative. Reddit threads dissecting the moment frame by frame, showing Modric's positioning, the clear passing lane, the mathematical certainty that passing was the correct decision. YouTube clips already posted. Bellingham's selfish decision costs Madrid El Clásico. The thumbnails showed his face in agony, Modrić with his arms raised, the ball sailing wide. His phone buzzed. His agent, don't read the comments, don't post anything, we'll handle it. Another buzz. His father, head up son, you're still world class. Another. His mother, call me when you can. He had ignored all of them, scrolling through the criticism like self-harm, each comment a fresh cut. But one comment kept appearing in different forms from different accounts, all saying essentially the same thing. Modrić was right there. Why didn't he pass? Why didn't he pass? Because he had wanted to be the hero. Because the goal had looked possible, because scoring in the 81st minute of El Clásico to secure victory would have been the moment that defined his season, maybe his career, because he was Jude Bellingham, and Jude Bellingham scored important goals. Except he hadn't scored, he had missed, and now he was the villain. His apartment in the Chamartín district was modern and minimal, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Madrid, designer furniture, walls decorated with framed jerseys from important matches. He had moved here from the team hotel after his first month, wanting independence, wanting to feel like he had truly arrived. Tonight, the space felt empty and cold. He had poured himself water, stood at the window, looked out at the city lights, and tried not to think about 11 words spoken in a tunnel. Sleep didn't come easy. He had lain in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment over and over. In some versions, he made the shot. In others, he passed to Modrić, who scored, and the veteran had celebrated by pointing at Bellingham, acknowledging the assist. But reality didn't offer do-overs. Reality offered only consequence. Training the next morning had been scheduled for 10 a.m. A light recovery session, mostly stretching and pool work, after the intensity of El Clásico. Bellingham had arrived early, as always, walking through the Valdebebas training complex with his hood up, headphones on, avoiding eye contact. The facility was state-of-the-art, everything a modern footballer could need. Multiple pristine grass pitches, indoor facilities, medical rooms, tactical analysis centers. It was a place designed to create champions. The dressing room had been half full when he arrived, some players in the pool, others getting treatment. Modric's locker had been empty, his training gear untouched. For a moment, Bellingham had felt relief, not having to face him yet, not having to acknowledge the tension. But then he had heard voices from the medical room. Modrić talking with the physio about his ankle, the one that had been bothering him since February, the reason he played fewer minutes now, the reason his contract was expiring. The training session had been awkward and tense. Players had gone through the motions, stretching on the grass, light jogging, passing drills with no intensity. Ancelotti had watched from the sideline with his arms crossed, his usual relaxed demeanor replaced by something harder. The assistant coaches had run the drills mechanically. During a passing circle, 10 players, 1 ball, quick combinations, Bellingham had found himself opposite Modrić. The drill required eye contact, communication, sharp passes. Neither man had spoken. They had completed their passes with technical precision but emotional coldness, the ball moving between them like a message neither wanted to send but protocol demanded. Vinicius had tried to lighten the mood, cracking jokes in Portuguese, doing his usual theatrical celebrations after simple passes. A few players had laughed, grateful for the release. But the tension remained, visible in how players positioned themselves, some gravitating toward Bellingham, the young star they had grown close with, others toward Modrić, the veteran leader who commanded respect through 12 years of excellence. The Spanish press had descended on Valdebebas like vultures. By lunchtime, headlines were everywhere. Crisis at Madrid, Bellingham and Modrić not speaking. Sources, veteran midfielder, questions young stars' decision-making. Barcelona, laughing as Madrid, self-destructs. Ancelotti faces, dressing room divide. Most articles were speculation, unnamed sources, tactical analysts breaking down the play frame by frame, but some contained quotes, clearly leaked from inside the club. Some players feel Jude needs to be more of a team player. The veterans are concerned about his decision-making in crucial moments. There's a feeling he's trying to do too much. The article that cut deepest was in El País, written by their senior football correspondent, someone who had covered Madrid for 30 years. The headline, "The Price of Genius Without Wisdom." The piece analyzed Bellingham's season, brilliant individual performances, stunning goals, but also a pattern of forcing plays, of trying to create magic when simplicity was the better option. The article contrasted him with Modrić, who had built a legendary career on making the simple pass look genius, on understanding that football was a team sport first and an individual showcase second. The piece concluded, Jude Bellingham may become one of the greatest players of his generation, but first he must learn what Luka Modrić has always known. The torch is not stolen, it's passed when the time is right, with grace and respect. Until he understands that, he will remain talented but not legendary. Bellingham had read it 3 times, each time feeling the words sink deeper. His social media had continued to explode, some fans defending him, most criticizing. Former players were analyzing the play on television, most agreeing that passing was the obvious choice. Even England teammates had started texting him, carefully worded messages that tried to be supportive but couldn't hide their concern. His mother had called that evening. She had watched the match from Birmingham, where she still lived, where Jude had grown up playing in youth leagues before his move to Birmingham City's academy at 8 years old. She had been his biggest supporter through every step. The move to Dortmund at 17, the transfer to Madrid at 20, the immediate pressure of living up to a €100 million price tag. "Are you okay?" she had asked, her voice carrying the particular concern only mothers can convey. "I'm fine," he had lied. "Jude, talk to me." "I should have passed." The words had come out before he could stop them, the first time he had said them aloud. Silence on the line. Then, "Yes, you should have." The honesty had stung. He had wanted her to defend him, to say the decision was reasonable, that these things happen. But his mother had never lied to him about football. When he was 12 and cocky after scoring 4 goals in a match, she had told him he'd played selfishly. When he was 15 and considering skipping school for extra training, she had told him education mattered more than football. She had always told him the truth, even when it hurt. "I heard what he said," Bellingham had admitted, "in the tunnel, about me thinking I'm already a legend." "Are you?" "Am I what?" "A legend." No, not yet, but I will be." And that's what Luka sees, the will be without the not yet. She had let that sit for a moment. Then, "You've achieved incredible things, Jude, but you're 21. Luka is 39. He's done everything in football. When he talks, maybe you should listen. Not because he's right about everything, but because he's earned the right to be heard." They had talked for another 20 minutes, but those words had stayed with Bellingham. The earned right to be heard. He had rights too, the right to shoot when he saw an opportunity, the right to make decisions on the pitch, the right to express his talent. But had he earned the right to ignore a teammate who was open? Had he earned the right to prioritize his moment over the team's success? Wednesday training had been more of the same: professional distance, careful avoidance, players choosing sides without openly declaring allegiance. Ancelotti had pulled Bellingham aside after the session, walking with him toward the dressing room, his hand on the young midfielder's shoulder. "You are an incredible player, Jude, world class, but football is not played alone. I know that." "Do you?" Ancelotti's voice had been gentle but firm. "Because on Saturday night, you forgot, and it cost us. I thought I could score. So did Luka, but Luka knew he could score because he was in the better position. That's not talent, Jude, that's wisdom." "Is this because of what he said in the tunnel?" Ancelotti had stopped walking, turning to face him fully. "What did he say?" Bellingham had hesitated, then decided honesty was the only path. "That I think I'm already a legend, that legends know when to pass the torch, not steal it." The Italian had nodded slowly, processing the words. "And what do you think about that?" "I think he's wrong. I'm not trying to steal anything. I'm trying to help us win." "By making the wrong decision?" "It wasn't wrong. The shot was there. The pass was more there." Ancelotti's voice had remained calm, infuriatingly reasonable. "Jude, you will be a legend. I believe that. But legends are not made in one moment. They are made in 10,000 moments of choosing the team over the self. Luka knows that. You need to learn it." The manager had walked away, leaving Bellingham standing alone in the corridor, the photographs of Real Madrid legends staring down at him from the walls: Di Stefano, Puskas, Yento, Zidane, Ronaldo. Modrić would be up there someday. Would Bellingham? Or would he be remembered as the talented kid who never quite figured out how to be great? Thursday had brought a tactical meeting, the entire squad in the analysis room, watching film of the Barcelona match, breaking down what went wrong. When the 81st minute play had appeared on screen, the room had fallen silent. The tactical camera angle showed everything clearly: Modrić in space, waving for the ball; Vinicius making the run; Rodrigo arriving at the far post. 3 better options than the shot Bellingham had taken. Ancelotti had paused the video at the moment before Bellingham shot, the freeze frame showing all 4 players perfectly positioned. This is a 2-on-1 situation that becomes 4-on-3 when the ball enters the final third. We have numbers, we have space, we have time. What we need is... He had left the sentence hanging. Decision-making, someone had said. Bellingham wasn't sure who. Correct, decision-making. The difference between good players and great players is not talent. It's choosing the right play at the right moment. The video had continued. Bellingham's shot, the miss, Barcelona's counter, the goal, the defeat. When the lights came back on, several players had glanced at Bellingham, some with sympathy, some with judgment. Modrić had stared straight ahead, expressionless. Friday training had been cancelled, Ancelotti's decision, giving everyone the weekend to reset mentally before the next match, a home fixture against Sevilla the following Wednesday. Bellingham had gone to the gym anyway, needing to do something, unable to sit still with his thoughts. The Valdebebas gym was empty except for a few players on the injury list, working through rehabilitation programs with the physios. He had been on the rowing machine, headphones on, losing himself in the mechanical rhythm when he had seen Modrić enter. The Croatian had gone straight to the treatment table, where a physio had begun working on his ankle. Ice, compression, manipulation, the injury that was ending his career, the body finally giving out after years of elite performance. Bellingham had finished his rowing set and moved to the weights, deliberately positioning himself where he could see Modrić in the mirror. The veteran had been lying on his back, staring at the ceiling while the physio worked, his face showing the kind of pain that comes from knowing your body is betraying you, that the thing you've done your entire life is slipping away. For a moment, Bellingham had seen him not as the critic, not as the obstacle, but as what he truly was. A 39-year-old man fighting against time, trying to squeeze out a few more months of a career that had been extraordinary. A man who had won everything. A man who had nothing left to prove. A man who was being replaced inevitably by younger players like Bellingham. And suddenly, the words in the tunnel took on a different meaning. He thinks he's already a legend, but legends know when to pass the torch, not steal it. Not a criticism of Bellingham's ability, a criticism of how he was claiming his place. Not with respect, not with gratitude, but with arrogance, with the assumption that simply being talented gave him the right to everything. Bellingham had finished his workout and walked to the treatment room entrance. Modrić had been sitting up now, the physio wrapping his ankle, discussing treatment plans in Spanish. Bellingham had stood there for a long moment, trying to find words, trying to figure out how to bridge the gap. Modrić had looked up, seen him, and for a brief second their eyes had met. Then the Croatian had looked away, back to his ankle, and the moment had passed. Saturday had been a day off, but Bellingham couldn't escape football. His phone had continued to buzz with messages, articles, videos. The Madrid-Barcelona rivalry meant every angle was being analyzed. Fan channels on YouTube had posted reaction videos with titles like Bellingham's ego problem exposed and Why Madrid will regret signing Bellingham. Television pundits were debating whether he was mature enough to handle the pressure of Real Madrid. The most damaging piece had come from an interview with a former Madrid midfielder, Guti, who had played with the Galacticos, who understood the pressure of the Bernabéu. He had been asked about the Bellingham-Modrić situation on a popular Spanish talk show. Jude is an incredible talent, Guti had said, his words careful but pointed. But talent without humility is dangerous. When I was young at Madrid, I had Zidane, Figo, Ronaldo, legends everywhere, and I learned from them. I didn't try to be better than them. I tried to learn how they were great. That's what made me a good player. Jude needs to understand that Luka has nothing left to prove. Luka is trying to help him, but you can't help someone who thinks they don't need help. The words had cut deep because they were true. Bellingham had never explicitly rejected Modric's guidance, but he had never truly sought it either. He had been so focused on establishing himself, on proving he belonged, on living up to his price tag, that he had treated Madrid like a stage for his individual performance rather than a team with history, with culture, with standards that transcended any single player. Sunday morning had brought a message from Ancelotti. Team meeting, Monday 9 a.m., mandatory, be early. Bellingham had arrived at Valdebebas at 8:15, determined to be the first one there, to show commitment. But Modric's car had already been in the parking lot, the veteran's usual spot taken. Inside, the dressing room had been quiet. Modrić had been sitting at his locker, already changed into training gear, staring at his phone. Bellingham had walked to his own locker, just 3 spots away, that proximity suddenly feeling significant. He had changed slowly, methodically, trying to gather courage. The room had gradually filled: Vinicius, Carvajal, Courtois, Camavinga, the rest of the squad. By 8:55, everyone had been present. Ancelotti had entered at exactly 9 a.m., his face serious. "Gentlemen, we lost El Clásico. We lost because we made mistakes, tactical mistakes, individual mistakes, team mistakes. But the biggest mistake we can make now is to let that loss divide us." He had paced in front of them, his hands clasped behind his back. Football is not played by individuals, it's played by teams. The best teams are not always the most talented. They are the teams that trust each other, that communicate, that put the team before the self. His eyes had moved across the room, landing on Bellingham, then on Modrić, then back to the middle. Some of you are at the beginning of your Madrid careers, some are at the end. But right now, in this moment, you are all equal. You are all wearing this shirt, and this shirt demands respect. Respect for your teammates, respect for the history, respect for what it means to be Real Madrid. The room had been silent, players staring at their boots, the weight of everything unsaid hanging in the air. "Jude," Ancelotti had said, and Bellingham's stomach had dropped. "Stand up." He had stood, every eye in the room on him. "Tell me what you learned from Saturday." Bellingham's mouth had been dry, his mind racing. What had he learned? That he should have passed, that he had been selfish, that his ego had cost them the match. But saying that out loud, in front of everyone, felt like surrender. "I learned—" He had paused, trying to find words that were honest, without being humiliating. "I learned that the right play isn't always the hero play." And what is the right play? The one that gives us the best chance to score. Which was? Silence. Then, passing to Luka. The name had hung in the air. Bellingham had forced himself to look at Modrić, who had been staring at him with an expression that was hard to read, not quite satisfaction, not quite forgiveness, something more complex. "Luka," Ancelotti had said, and the veteran had stood. "What do you want to say to Jude?" Modrić had been quiet for a long moment. Then, "You are one of the best young players I have ever seen. Your talent is extraordinary. But talent without wisdom is incomplete. And wisdom comes from understanding that football is bigger than any one moment, any one player, any one goal." He had paused, his eyes locked on Bellingham. "When I was your age, I thought I knew everything. I played for Dinamo Zagreb, and I was the best player in Croatia. Then I came to Tottenham, and I realized I knew nothing. The game was faster. The defenders were smarter. I had to learn. Then I came to Madrid, and I had to learn again. I watched Xavi, I watched Iniesta, I watched Xabi Alonso, and I learned that the greatest players are not the ones who shine, the brightest. They are the ones who make everyone around them shine." The dressing room had been completely silent. Even the coaches had stopped moving. "You will be a great player, Jude, maybe even a legend, but not if you keep trying to be one. Legends are not built in one moment. They are built in 10,000 moments of making the right decision, of trusting your teammates, of understanding that passing the ball to someone in a better position is not giving up your glory, it's earning it." Bellingham had felt his throat tighten, his eyes had started to burn, and he had fought it, refused to cry in front of the team. But the words had hit something deep, some truth he had been avoiding. "I'm sorry." His voice had been quiet but clear. "I should have passed. I knew you were there. I saw you. I wanted to be the one who scored, and I was wrong. I cost us the match. I cost us 3 points, and I disrespected you." Modrić had nodded slowly. "Apology accepted, but now you must show it, not in words, in actions." Ancelotti had let the moment breathe, then clapped his hands once. "Okay, this is done. We move forward. Sevilla on Wednesday. Everyone starts fresh. Everyone remembers what it means to wear this shirt." The meeting had ended, players dispersing to training. But Bellingham had stayed, waiting until the room emptied. Modrić had been one of the last to leave, moving slowly, his ankle clearly bothering him. "Luka," Bellingham had called out. The Croatian had stopped, turned. "Can we talk? Privately?" They had walked to the tactics room, a small space with a video screen and a whiteboard, empty during training sessions. Bellingham had closed the door, the two of them alone for the first time since the tunnel. "I heard what you said," Bellingham had started, "in the mixed zone, to the journalist." Modrić had shown no surprise. "I assumed you did. You changed after that night. It hurt, not because you were wrong, because you were right, and I didn't want to admit it. Pride is a useful tool until it becomes a cage. How did you do it? Bellingham had asked. How did you stay at the top for so long? How did you handle the pressure, the expectations, the constant judgment? Modrić had smiled, sad and knowing. By understanding that I was not competing against my teammates, I was competing against my own limitations. Every training session, every match, I asked myself, what can I learn today? What can I improve? Who can teach me something? Even now, at 39, I ask those questions. But you've won everything. Exactly, which means the only person who can beat me is myself. The only way I fail is if I stop growing, and the fastest way to stop growing is to stop listening. Bellingham had nodded, the wisdom sinking in. I want to learn from you. I know you're probably leaving this summer, but until then, I want to understand how you see the game, how you make decisions, how you've stayed great for so long. Modrić had studied him for a long moment. This is not a tactic to make me feel better. This is genuine. Yes, then I will teach you, but you must listen. Really listen. Not just hear the words and filter them through your ego. Actually absorb them. I will, I promise. They had shaken hands, the gesture feeling significant. Not quite a reconciliation, that would take time, but a beginning. A mutual acknowledgement that they were on the same side, working toward the same goal. Training that Monday had felt different, not completely healed, but less tense. Players had communicated more freely, the drills had flowed better. And during a tactical exercise, 11 versus 11, full-sided simulation, Bellingham had received the ball in the attacking third with space to shoot. Modrić had been making a run to his left, calling for the pass. Bellingham had passed. Modrić had received it, taken one touch, and finished cleanly. The coaches had blown their whistles, praising the combination. Modrić had jogged back, clapping his hands once in Bellingham's direction. Small acknowledgement, meaningful weight. After training, they had stayed late, just the two of them, and a ball, working on specific scenarios. Modrić explaining his thought process, how he read defenders' body positioning, how he knew when to pass and when to dribble, how he processed information in split seconds. Bellingham had listened, really listened, his notebook out, taking notes like a student. The game is played in your mind before your feet, Modrić had explained. By the time you receive the ball, you should already know what you're going to do. That comes from scanning, looking around constantly, building a picture. Most young players only look when they have the ball. Great players look before they receive it. They had practiced scenarios, receiving the ball under pressure, one-touch combinations, decision-making in the final third. Modrić demonstrating with the economy of motion that only came from mastery, Bellingham trying to replicate not just the technique, but the thinking behind it. Tuesday had been the final preparation session before Sevilla. Ancelotti had announced the starting lineup, Modrić and Bellingham both starting in midfield, the partnership being tested after all the drama. The message was clear. The team needed them both. They were stronger together than apart. The Sevilla match on Wednesday night had been Madrid's chance to show they had moved past El Clásico. The Bernabéu was two-thirds full. A weeknight match against mid-table opposition didn't draw the same crowds, but the atmosphere was charged. Fans wanted to see how Bellingham and Modrić would play together after everything that had happened. The match had been professional and controlled. Madrid dominated possession, Sevilla defended deep. The kind of game that required patience and precision rather than brilliance. In the 63rd minute, the opening had appeared. Modrić had collected the ball in midfield, played it wide to Carvajal, received it back, and suddenly spotted Bellingham making a perfectly timed run behind Sevilla's defensive line. The pass had been inch-perfect, weighted exactly right, arriving at Bellingham's feet just as he hit full stride. One touch to control, one touch to set. A shot low and hard into the corner. 1-0. Bellingham had run to the corner flag, arms spread wide, but then he had stopped, turned, and pointed directly at Modrić. The Croatian had jogged over, and they had embraced, not the brief professional hug of teammates, but something more genuine, lasting several seconds. The Bernabéu had erupted, the applause not just for the goal, but for what it represented. Madrid won 3-0, a comfortable victory. Modrić had been substituted in the 80th minute, the entire stadium standing to applaud him as he walked off. Bellingham had been the first to meet him at the sideline, shaking his hand, saying something brief and private. In the dressing room afterward, the atmosphere had been light, music playing, players laughing. Ancelotti had given a short speech praising the team's response to adversity. When he had finished, Modrić had stood. "I want to say something," the Croatian had announced, and the room had quieted. "We are a team, not because we always agree, but because we work through disagreement. Jude and I had a difficult moment, but we chose to address it, to talk, to learn from each other. That is what makes a team strong, not perfection, but honesty and growth." He had looked at Bellingham. "You will be a great player, I believe that, and I hope, when your career is as long as mine has been, you will pass on what you learned. That is how we honor this shirt." The room had erupted in applause. Bellingham had nodded, unable to speak, the weight of the moment too heavy for words. The weeks that followed had brought a rhythm. Madrid had gone on a winning streak, 5 straight victories in La Liga, progression in the Champions League. Bellingham and Modrić had developed an understanding on the pitch that went beyond tactics, a connection built on mutual respect and complementary skills. Modric's vision finding Bellingham's runs, Bellingham's energy creating space for Modric's precision. But the calendar was advancing. Modric's contract expired in June. The club had offered a 1-year extension, but the Croatian had been non-committal, considering options elsewhere, considering retirement. Every match felt potentially like his last, in white. In late April, Real Madrid faced Manchester City in the Champions League semi-final, the kind of match that defined legacies. The first leg at the Etihad had been a brutal 2-2 draw, City dominating possession, but Madrid defending heroically. The second leg at the Bernabéu was set for a Tuesday night, and everyone knew this could be Modric's final Champions League match at home. The stadium had been packed to capacity, every seat filled 90 minutes before kickoff. Banners for Modrić hung from multiple sections, fans paying tribute to 12 years of service. The atmosphere had been electric and emotional, celebrating a legend while still demanding victory. The match had been everything Champions League football promised: intense, tactical, moments of brilliance mixed with desperate defending. City scored first through Haaland in the 34th minute. Madrid equalized through Vinicius in the 56th. 1-1, the aggregate score 3-3, away goals no longer the tiebreaker, everything heading toward extra time. The 79th minute had brought the moment. Madrid won a free kick 30 yards from goal, central position. Too far to shoot directly, but close enough for a delivery. Modrić had stood over the ball, the captain's armband on his left bicep, his career potentially ending in minutes. The Bernabéu had risen to its feet, 80,000 people chanting his name. He had looked up, scanning the box, seeing the positioning. Bellingham had been making a run to the near post, dragging a defender. Rodrigo at the far post. Militão waiting for the flick on. Options everywhere. The delivery had been perfect. Curling, dipping, arriving at the penalty spot with pace but controllable. Bellingham had timed his jump perfectly, meeting it with his forehead, directing it toward the far corner. The goalkeeper had dived, fully extended, and for a moment the entire stadium had held its breath. The ball had hit the inside of the post and bounced across the goal line by 6 inches. Goal, 2-1, 4-3 on aggregate. The Bernabéu had exploded. Bellingham had sprinted to Modrić, sliding on his knees, embracing the Croatian, both of them knocked over by the rush of teammates. The celebration had lasted 30 seconds. Pure joy and relief, before reality reasserted itself, and everyone ran back for the restart. Madrid had held on through 11 minutes of stoppage time, City throwing everything forward, Madrid defending with heroic desperation. When the final whistle blew, the entire team had collapsed on the pitch in exhaustion and euphoria. Real Madrid was going to another Champions League final. Modrić had been one of the last to stand. Bellingham had helped him up, the two of them walking together toward the fans, waving, acknowledging the applause. Modric's face had shown what the moment meant. Potentially his final Champions League match at the Bernabéu, potentially his final moment in a competition he had defined for a decade, the perfect ending to an extraordinary chapter. In the dressing room, the celebration had been loud and chaotic, music blasting, players dancing, champagne being sprayed, despite it being only the semi-final. Ancelotti had given up trying to control it, simply smiling and letting his players enjoy the moment. Bellingham had found Modrić sitting quietly in the corner, away from the chaos, his boots off, his feet in ice. Baths, his face showing the exhaustion of 94 minutes at the highest level at 39 years old. Bellingham had sat beside him, both of them watching the celebration. "Thank you," Bellingham had said quietly. "For what?" "For not giving up on me, after El Clásico, after everything. You could have just written me off as another arrogant kid, but you gave me a chance to learn." Modrić had smiled, tired but genuine. "You wanted to learn. That's the difference. Talent without willingness to grow is wasted. You have both." "Will you stay? Next season?" The Croatian had been quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. My body is telling me it's time. But my heart..." He had gestured toward the dressing room, the celebrating teammates, the shirt hanging in his locker. "This is hard to leave." "Then don't. Stay one more year. Help us win another Champions League. Help me keep learning." "I'm not your teacher, Jude. I'm your teammate. You're both, and I need both." Modrić had nodded slowly, not committing, but not refusing. "Let's win the final first. Then we think about next year." The Champions League final, 3 weeks later in Istanbul, had been against Bayern Munich, another giant, another tactical battle. Madrid had won 2-1, Bellingham scoring the opening goal from a Modrić assist, the symmetry perfect. When the trophy had been presented, Modrić had lifted it for the 7th time, his face showing not triumph, but peace, the contentment that comes from knowing you've done everything possible with the talent you were given. In the aftermath, in the hotel at 4 a.m, players finally crashing after hours of celebration, Bellingham had checked his phone and seen a message from Modrić. "I'm staying, 1 more year, let's see what else we can win together." Bellingham had smiled, exhausted and happy, and typed back, "Thank you for teaching me what it means to be a legend, not by stealing the torch, but by being worthy when it's passed." The response had come immediately. "You're learning, keep going." And he would, because that's what legends did. They learned, they grew. They understood that greatness was not a destination, but a journey, not an individual achievement, but a collective effort, not something taken, but something earned through 10,000 right decisions, through humility and wisdom, and the willingness to become better than you were yesterday. The shot in the 81st minute of El Clásico had cost them a match, but it had taught him something more valuable than any single victory, that football was bigger than any moment, any player, any glory. That legends were made not by being the best player on the pitch, but by making everyone on the pitch better, that the torch was not stolen, it was passed, and Jude Bellingham was finally ready to receive it the right way.